channel. It's been a long time since I've sat down and had a chat to you lot about fights. But this weekend, UFC 267, I thought I would peek my head back out around that corner and talk fights. Talk all 6 fights on this main card using the Verdict app to kind of structure my breakdowns and go for value. Also offer some insights to some bets that I'm placing myself and hopefully have a profitable weekend. Let's just get into it. I have no recap. It's been a four fight night event hiatus since my last video, so that is what it is. But I'm back. I'm back with a vengeance. We've got at the bottom of this Verdict card Magomed Ankalaev versus Volkan Uzdemir. Ankalaev 1.22 times on Verdict and $1.31. Volkan Uzdemir 5.52 times and $3.35. And let's get this show on the fucking road, man. The Tadpole's back. And he's back with a bang. I've got no time to waste. I'm on Volkan Uzdemir here. And call me crazy. He is tried and tested at this level. Magomed, he's the new flavour. Everyone wants to taste. Not me. Ankalaev is very impressive. He's a large frame, relatively smooth mover. He's got pretty good defense, and he fires a nice high kick, and obviously can hit the takedown when need be as well to pretty good effect. But he hasn't really come across a top guy yet, in my opinion. Kutalaba beat him twice. It's a middle of the road guy. His last fight, Nikita Krylov, that's a decent win. I think that I rate Nikita Krylov higher than the average punter. But even that win for Ankalaev wasn't without difficulty, Volkan, he's legit. I kind of rate this guy. He isn't sexy, he isn't flashy, but he hits like a truck. He has pretty good volume. Conditioning has failed him before. I've got flashbacks to the 3rd round against Anthony Smith. But Ankalaev, his cardio is pretty shit as well. Volkan's aggressive. He gets on the front foot a lot. I feel like he can cut off the cage. And he uses his kicks super well. His leg kicks are thunderous. He hits the body as well. Those are 2 things that Magomed, he doesn't really do. He doesn't go elsewhere with his strikes. He's very much focused on the head. With that being said, I think Ankalaev is fundamentally better on the feet. His technique is pretty pure. But Volkan makes it messy with his angles and that inside boxing, and then he can damage you from the outside with the low kicks. And I actually rate his defensive wrestling too. Magomed can go there, and he did need to in his last fight against Krylov, because Nikita took that first round, touched him up with the kicks, that karate base, and the body work was big, and Ankalaev needed it on the mat. I think Uzdemir can have similar success on the feet as Krylov did, and then I think that Magomed's going to find it much, much harder to get Uzdemir down than he did Krylov. Uzdemir's got 80% takedown defense, Krylov only 55%. So it remains to be seen when the boys get in there, but all things said, I think Ankalaev is the deserved favourite, but I think it's a fantastic price for Volkan, and I'm on it. And I'm taking him via a decision at 11.23 times. If I'm being honest, I can see the knockout, him jump up on the side of the octagon, point at the wristwatch, show the drip, but Ankalaev pretty responsible, never been slept. So decision play is where my head's at. It's a good fight. It's a good way to kick things off. Next along, Li Jingliang versus Khamzat Chimaev. Li Jingliang 4.48 times and $4.40. 444. Khamzat 1.29 times and $1.20. Li Jingliang, he's a hard-nosed customer, and I feel like fans kind of really get around him. His fights are always full of action, and he's very durable, and he hits hard, and he has good hand speed, Also got good leg kicks. He doesn't have a wrestling background, but from what I've seen, he has some capacity to scramble on the mat, and he has notched some submission wins. But, I think Hamzat prevails here. Simple as that. There are factors though, the layoff, having COVID, a pretty bad variation of it from all accounts, and that kind of forcing him into somewhat of a mental breakdown with his retirement post, yada yada. It's not exactly been the ideal year between fights for him, but when he's in the octagon, he's an absolute force, and he has not been grazed through 3 fights. He's got good movement, swift striking on the feet, and just an absolute monster in the grappling department. Really, really big frame for 170. And I do think that in that grappling, in the grappling scenarios, is where he can separate himself from Lee in this fight. It is kind of a scary comeback for Hamzat. Jingliang, he's been around at welterweight, He's a middle road contender, but he's a dangerous guy for sure. And we haven't really seen Hamzat matched up with someone like this in his past. I think it's a good test, and it's pretty good matchmaking. I do think that Chimaev gets put through some adversity, or at least more adversity than he's had through his UFC career this far. Because, Jingliang's not just going to go away. He's very durable. And he will fire back, but ultimately I've got Chimaev by a decision at 6.98 times. On verdict here, Hamzat, what is he, 1.29 times. I don't really like the straight up price, but 6.98 for the decision, that multiplier is quite nice. So, Jingliang's only been finished once, which was a submission. He's going to hang around. I'm a fan of the matchup. Next along, got some big bellas in the cage. Alexander Volkov versus Marcin Tabura. Volkov 1.21 times on verdict and $1.34. Marcin Tabura 5.82 times and $3.18. The Trim Man, Trim Marcin Tabura. It's a real thing now. He's currently on a 5-fight win streak, and he's carrying plenty of momentum. He, for an old fella, he has turned it around in a big way. And it kind of coincided with when he shifted his training focus to cardio and conditioning. And he's a legit contender at heavyweight. It can't be denied. You're getting a fight against Volkov. You're towards the pointy end of the division. Skill set, Tabura always been a solid grappler. He's got a good top game with a tight squeeze and relatively active ground and pound, but he has always just faded. Got to points in fights where he couldn't get to the hips anymore, and just ends up absorbing damage on the feet. Now, without that cardio deficit, he can grapple for longer. He does hit those takedowns throughout his fights, and his defense on the feet is also much better. His offense on the feet, still pretty rudimentary in my opinion. He will sweep a leg kick across and pop the body on occasion, but by and large he will kind of crash his way into the pocket with wide hooks and not the greatest of technique. Alexander Volkov. This is a guy, if you've been watching my videos, I do rate really highly. He's got fantastic natural attributes with his length, and he uses them to good effect. He manages range really well. His distance management strikes like the jab and the teep kick, they're just constantly out there. His volume's good, his cardio is fantastic. He'll kick low, he'll kick high, he'll work the body, he'll fire the knees, he'll hit the elbows. It's good to see. His grappling defense, I'm not convinced. Curtis Blaydes showed us that he can be thrown around a bit. But even towards the back end of that Blaydes fight, Volkov, he was forcing the stand-ups. And since that fight, Volkov hasn't been taken down on 6 attempts. I would like to just quickly speak on Alexander Volkov's last fight against Cyril Gane. It didn't play out like I thought it would, The striking numbers were high, but it did feel like a mirror match at times, and Alexander just had such a difficult time piecing Cyril's puzzle together. The footwork was a big issue. Volkov couldn't extend his combinations as Gane was just getting away from him, and that was the story of the fight. Tabura, he doesn't offer those same things even remotely. You know, he isn't going to have odd angles or unorthodox movement for Volkov to compete with. You know, he doesn't have the natural attributes that Cyril has either to contend with Alexander at range. He's going to have opportunities when he crashes into the pocket, and if he hits a takedown, Tabura's going to have an advantage for sure. But I'm thinking Volkov is going to get his hips back, stay wise, circle out, manage range, and just tee off on Marcin pretty much. Hit the body, soften him up, and find a knockout in the first round. I am excited for this fight. I do think Marcin is a somewhat solid heavyweight contender, but let's not forget Walt Harris had Marcin dead to rights in the opening sequence of his last fight before Walt just did what Walt does and fades incredibly early and gets rolled. So Volkov, he's not going to do those same things and wilt like Walt. Round 1 knockout, 2.79 times. Moving on. Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker. Makhachev 1.54 times and $1.14. $1.14. Crikey. Dan Hooker 2.86 times and $5.50. Everyone loves Dan Hooker for taking this fight. I love it. I think it's a fantastic way to push his name, bump his stock, and if he wins, whoa, he's going to take a whole lot of steam out of Islam, inject it into himself, and fly back into the top 5 to 6 ranked fighters in this division. And you know, Dan Hooker, he has some handy advantages in this matchup. He's the way longer guy, which is big. It's a big factor. Islam is by and large a grappler, and that reach deficit is gonna create a bigger gap between himself and Dan to work the wrestling game. Another advantage, Dan Hooker's versatility. You know, he is a great striker. He's got a Muay Thai / kickboxing base, and he uses all of the weapons that you can really. And he has some of the best knee knockouts in UFC history on his highlight reel, which is a real danger for Islam again, because when he tries to close the distance, there's a threat there. Another pro for Dan. He has a tight as fuck guillotine, the hangman choke. You know, it's his namesake, for fuck's sake. Islam's going to have to mind his P's and Q's when he does go for that double leg. I think Dan Hooker has a good chance at winning this fight. You know, on the feet, I think he is the better striker. He has a nice jab, you know, a solid kicking game, kind of odd movement as well. There is fluidity to his footwork, but it also comes off somewhat jerky and awkward, like the step-through knockout on James Vick. Plus, I have an obvious soft spot for the bloke, especially with the storyline of backing up with this fight. Islam, though, he seems like such a force. His grappling, very good. His control is dominant. And, you know, on the feet, his technique is okay. He does have a kicking game. He does pour the jab out, and he does sit down on his shots as well. His defense, it is his shortcoming. It's not the best. But, yeah. Can Islam take Dan down and control this fight, work for a submission? Yes. Could Dan catch Islam on the feet or snatch his neck in a submission? Yeah, absolutely. I even think that if Dan does defend the takedown, he could take this on the cards as well. So fuck it. I'm going with my boy Dan. There is some solid reasoning to back it, and there is huge value on the submission in round 1 at 66.14 times. This price is absurd. You know, Dan Hooker has 7 pro submissions, 6 of them in the first round. You know, Makhachev has never been submitted, but he has been knocked out. He's not invincible. Hooker said it himself, he's not Superman. And I think if Dan can provide just a little bit of resistance, like I think he can with that grit and will to win that you get in the top of any division, It's a different level of fighter out there, and a little bit of resistance, stuff some takedowns. He's got 80% takedown defense. I think some of those defensive holes, especially on the feet, that Makhachev possesses, they can split a little wider. And let's cash that fantasy result. Co-main, first of our title bouts for the interim. Thought Piotr Yan was the champ. Anywho, Piotr Yan versus Corey Sandhagen. Yan 1.51 times and $1.39. Corey Sandhagen 2.98 times and $2.92. Awesome matchup. Corey Sandhagen is cool as fuck. I love his striking. So fluid. I also love the scrambles we see out of him on the ground. And then Piotr Yan, equally cool as fuck. The bloke does not stop. He hits hard, super hard for a 135er, and has relentless pressure and pretty top grappling as well. As for how these two stack up, to be entirely honest, I feel like TJ Dillashaw really did just lay out the blueprint for how a guy like Piotr Yan can beat Corey Sandhagen. And I don't have short-term memory loss. I know that was a close fight and it was ugly for TJ. He had to take a bunch of punishment to get inside. He had to box in combination and then work the legs at range to make sure that Corey couldn't just tee off on him with the jabs and with the teeps. It was tough for TJ, but I can see Piotr Yan doing exactly that. And, potentially having even more success with the grappling than TJ did. Dillashaw, he said his knee wasn't right. He couldn't hit those takedowns and take the hips with the same torque as he would at 100%. I feel like Yan's going to be able to do that. Corey's takedown defense is poor. And I did say at the top, Corey's scrambles on the ground are fantastic and he is tricky with his jiu-jitsu. But Yan is heavy on top and he can float over his opponent and maintain control very, very well. I think that Yan is going to hammer Corey's legs so fucking badly. And Corey has a great kicking game as well, but Yan's not going to want any part in a distance fight. He's going to kick the legs at separation, but then get straight on his merry way back inside range. He always does that. His forward movement is relentless. And his defense, head movement, trunk control also really good. Must be said, he's going to have to take some shots just like TJ did, but on the whole he is very defensively reliable and you can trust that high guard through 25 minutes. Those big energy movements from Corey, like the flying knees and the spinning elbows, they're just going to hit glove. So that's my thinking anyway. Two young studs of the division here, both very entertaining, both very durable and great conditioning. It all stacks up for an awesome fight, and I don't necessarily think that Yan should be this short, considering him and Aljo were $1.90 a piece prior to their bout. I think Corey Sandhagen is as threatening a matchup as Aljo was, but it's Piotr Yan for mine via a decision at 2.66 times. I think Corey's going to get his, but Yan is just a step ahead in my opinion and can lean on his skill set and his forward pressure to kind of take away some of that elite striking that Corey has. Main event. Jan Blachowicz versus Glover Teixeira. Yan 1.22 times and $1.36. Teixeira 5.57 times and $3.08. It's a battle of the underdogs. My word, both of these guys just notoriously the plus money fighter. So it is strange to see Blachowicz in that $1.30 range. But that's just the nature of Glover Teixeira. He's always losing until he is winning. Literally always. He does not warrant being a betting favourite. Plus, credit where credit's due, Blachowicz just shut out one of the more exciting and dangerous fighters in the UFC right now in future Hall of Famer Israel Adesanya. I just love that this fight is happening. Two guys that were perennial contenders, almost there. They're getting their shot and their spotlight here. I feel like it's good for the sport. It's good for the fans who have been around for a little while. It's just good. It's got a feel-good feel to it. As for their skills, Blachowicz, he's the better striker of the two. Glover, he's got great boxing, for sure. And his head movement when he's waiting at range is solid, but when he commits to a combination, his head stays relatively still, and that is by and large where he takes damage in his fights. He gets cracked in the pocket, he gets countered hard. I think Yan can make him pay there, like that knockout after the exchange on Luke Rockhold. He's adept in that dirty boxing, and his timing and reads are very, very good. At range, Blachowicz has an even bigger advantage. He actually has a kicking game, big power with his kicks, and he will target the body and then the head. That mark under Dominic Reyes' elbow in their fight was sickening. His ribs were just shot to shit. And for when these boys are striking, I see Yan hurting Glover, for real. As for the grappling, though, it's got to be said, Teixeira makes it a theme on the regular. It's where my thinking gets more cloudy. Glover, he is the better submission player. He is slick with his moves. He's very patient with his submission attempts, and then he has got a squeeze on him and an immovable top game. He gets so heavy from top or from side control. He's got that old man strength. Big broad back on the bastard. But so is Yan. The bloke is a fridge, and he has fantastic top control. And then when he chases the neck, his strongman chokes are typically lights out. So I'm struggling with it. I feel like both guys could keep the other down if they have top. In my head, it would make more sense for Glover to be the one initiating the grappling, as he is more credentialed, and I see Yan perhaps wanting to keep the striking, as I feel he is at an advantage there. But if Yan backs himself to secure top control, as he should and will, the mind of a fighter, I can easily see him hitting takedowns and probably racking up some meaningful control time and damage himself. So it's a very compelling aspect to this fight, and I can't wait to see how it plays out come fight night. But my pick right now, it's Yan Blachowicz. Glover around these odds, $3 to $4, it always seems worthy of a little wager. He's proven that to us time and time again, but I know that he's going to be second best in the striking here. The grappling, I don't know so much, so I'm going to stick to my thinking anyway. I'm taking Yan a decision at 5.65 times. I do think that if this gets extended at striking range, at kicking range, I think damage on the side of Glover will mount, and that bodywork that Yan consistently does, I think it could suck the life out of Glover, and we potentially see a finish at some point. But the 1.6 times price tag for a knockout, incredibly uninviting. So I'm willing to take the decision instead, kind of bank on Glover's grit to get there. And you read the stats, Belhauwich has 11 decisions on his pro resume compared to only the 8 knockout wins. So maybe it isn't such an odd outcome anyway. Well, 6 fights done and dusted, verdict slate done, bets time. We've got 4 single players plus the multi. Let's not wait around. Time is money, and that's why I've got no time. Volkan Uzdemir by knockout or decision at $3.90 over on Ladbrokes. You've heard it up above. It's an unpopular play. Lots of people on Magomed Ankalaev. I'm just not that high on him yet. And Uzdemir around these odds, getting the double chance for the decision or the knockout. It's a great price. Next single play, Khamzat Chimaev via submission or via points at $2.15 on Ladbrokes. Another double chance play. I'm writing the decision here on verdict, but as I alluded to, I feel like Chimaev is going to have a grappling advantage, and the submission could arise. Li Jingliang, he's never been knocked out, hence I'm leaving that outcome out. He has been submitted. Check my bases with that one. Next single play, I had to do it to you. It's a formula bet. 55% perceived edge. It's Dan Hooker on the money line at $5.50 over on Bet365. Yeah. With Islam Makhachev currently being priced at a moderate verdict favourite, this has a big edge through the formula. The formula, it's been struggling of late. Hopefully this is a bounce back, and it would be in a big way at $5.50 odds. My last single play of the evening, it's also on Dan Hooker. I'm taking him by submission at 23-1 on Sportsbet. Wise with that though, just the half unit play. Double dipping there, 1.5 units on Dan Hooker. Doesn't feel great, I must admit. But at 23-1 for a sub, a likely outcome given Dan Hooker's jiu-jitsu credentials and the likelihood of Islam trying to get in on the hips. I think that price is too much. I think it's about $9 over what it should be. Multi, 4 legs. We're diving into the prelims and taking a taste of Amanda Hebes on the money line, parlaying that with Khamzat Chimaev via submission or decision, parlaying that with Alexander Volkov by knockout, and rounding it out with Piotr Yan by decision, summing at $25.98 over on Ladbrokes. The latter 3 legs you've heard of, I've talked about it. I'll give you a little bit of reasoning on Amanda Hebes. I think the shine's rubbed off a little bit, but the loss to Marina Rodriguez is no knock. Amanda Hebes, she is a far better striker than Verna Jandiroba. Jandiroba very rudimentary with her striking, doesn't even have a jab. So at range there, it's Amanda all day. The grappling, Jandiroba very fucking good jiu-jitsu practitioner. But so is Amanda Hebes. I think Vernie could potentially be the stronger woman in there. This fight is back down at 115. Amanda had her last at 125. But I back Amanda to survive any jiu-jitsu scrambles on the ground and get her own as well there. They're very evenly matched up in the grappling. Amanda all day in the striking. I like it. That's that, guys. Thanks for tuning into the comeback episode. If you've stayed this long, drop a like. Tell me your plays, your bets. Tell me where I've gone wrong, and I'll tell you where I haven't. You cheeky little bastards. And hopefully it won't be so long between drinks on the next. You know, I do like talking to you lot. So appreciate it. Have a good fight night. See you on the next one. Catch up.